Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to CSLDallas Science of Mind class. I'm Dr. Petra, and we have fabulous new art from Valerie Guillon. This is her figure art. And if you haven't signed up, if you're in DFW and you haven't signed up for the avatar creation workshop next weekend, you should do so. I already have 3 of them that I've created on my own in her workshops. And so these are all spirit avatars and fabulous work that Valerie does that's a little different than her silk painting. So it's very fun. It's fun to be sitting surrounded by all these fabulous presences and all of you guys here in the room and you guys online. Yay. All right, so we are on page 6465. We are starting at the beginning. In the beginning, the question is, well, how did it all get here? What in the world is going on? How did it get here? And who's in charge anyway? Right? That's the question that people have been asking for hundreds of thousands of years, answering it in lots and lots of different ways. But always with a recognition that from a spiritual point of view, there's a recognition that there is an aliveness that is palpable, right? And we've given that aliveness the name of spirits, gods, God, spirit, lots of different ways in which we've tried to capture this sense of that there is something going on. And unlike our scientific idea that came from Newtonian physics, that somehow it was all a mechanistic thing that kind of happened randomly, from a sense of actually experiencing the presence and the sense of life itself, right? The question is, where did all this aliveness come from, and how did it get to be something? So every spiritual tradition has a creation story. Every religion has a creation story. The Hopi creation story is that the turtle arose from the sea and brought the people, and then they came from the turtle shell, and then they eventually populated the land. There are as many creation stories as there are peoples and cultures and religions. We are obviously primarily in the West. We come from the Judeo-Christian cultures and have the primary creation stories that come out of the Hebrew Bible, or what the Christians call the Old Testament. Although, of course, lots of other creation stories that are there as well. So in the science of mind, we take a little bit different tack in this creation story, and looking at that creation story in Genesis and asking ourselves what was really going on. And so this section is called The Story of Creation Simplified. So actually, just as an aside, there are actually 2 creation stories in the Old Testament, if you might not remember, if you might not be aware. The first creation story has to do with the creations of Adam and Eve and all of that. Actually, the second creation story is actually the older one, which is the creation story of the cosmos itself. And so, yes, so here we go. The Story of Creation Simplified. God, and so, and we have to take another caveat. I'm going to translate every time that Ernest Holmes wrote him or himself. And we always have to stop and recognize the time period in which Ernest Holmes was writing. This was originally written in 1927. So that was the accepted way of speaking, was to use the masculine pronoun to mean everybody. And also the primary audience was in fact Christian people or people coming out of Christianity who still mostly have a masculine understanding of this thing we call God. If you follow through on Holmes's writings, you'll notice that he and him becomes less and less and less used, first of all, in the textbook itself, but also over time in all of his writings. Because clearly, from our understanding, God is neither male nor female, has no gender, because it actually isn't a deity. So therefore, it can't actually have a pronoun, because it isn't somehow a discrete thing. And when you could say God he or God she, right, it's actually the oneness, which is the aliveness and the intelligence of everything, of life itself everywhere. So, and yet, when you tell a story, right, we anthropomorphize all kinds of things. We anthropomorphize the ant and the grasshopper in the fable, right? And so we anthropomorphize this thing so that we can get a hold of it. So remember that this is a myth, it's a legend, it's a story, it's a metaphor to help us get a hold of something without saying that that our anthropomorphized story is actually reality. What we're trying to do is get a hold of reality through the story. Okay, all the caveats. So God, meaning that supreme spirit or intelligence of the universe, was conscious of itself prior to the creation of any special world system. Being thus conscious and desiring to manifest in form, he did so manifest through the power of its word, which is the law. So God is not only pure spirit and intelligence, it is also perfect and immutable law. So these sentences are jam-packed with the fundamental idea. So first of all, that there is this larger, unformed intelligence and presence, the infinite one, and being unformed, it is not yet expressed. So therefore, it can't actually be infinite because it is simply potential. It is unformed. And so desiring to manifest in form, we're going to talk about why that is. Why would the infinite desire to manifest in form? However, how does that manifestation happen? Through the power of the word, which is the law. And so the power of the word is, let there be light, and there was light. So it is the spiritual prototype or the intentional seed that is planted. And if the seed is light, then light must be produced. That is the law. You can't say, let there be light, and have a tree. Does that make sense? Right? Because it's a law. And so when we use the word word, it is the beginning of a creative series, of a creative act, of a creative impulse that is intended to manifest. And the manifestation is in a lawful relationship to that individual impulse, the word. As pure spirit, it governs the universe through the power of its word. Hence, when it speaks, its word becomes law, and the law must obey. The law is mechanical, but the word is spontaneous. So what does that mean? Well, one, that the infinite can decide or can desire to be all kinds of forms. There's nothing requiring it to be a certain form. But once the impulse or the word is brought into being, then it must mechanically, automatically result in the form that is in relationship to the word. Does it make sense? Yes? Do you have enough coffee? Does everybody need to go get coffee? Okay. So the infinite cannot speak a word which contradicts its own nature. So the infinite can't speak a word of non-expression. It is constantly and always speaking the word of manifestation of itself, which is what? Life. Over and over and over and over again. Life. Expression of life. And that's the trajectory. When we say that the law is impersonal, it's not that it doesn't have a trajectory. We mean that it's automatic or mechanical. It has to produce what has been given to it. But the trajectory of life is always for life. It has an actual trajectory, which is what we seek to align ourselves with, right? And what we seek to allow to flow through us. So when we understand this idea of this creation story, we recognize that, like every other spiritual tradition, there is this sense that there is an impulse, something that brings manifestation into form. So, and since this God is pure intelligence and endless being, it is always creating. It is always creating. So there's no beginning and no end. It wasn't like in the beginning. It's just that the creation series is forever beginning all the time, because that's its nature. Its nature is to manifest, or it would be unexpressed. Always creating. It is its nature to create, but being all, it must act within itself. So the word is, there's no other place, right? There's nothing outside of the one. So everything is happening inside the one, as the one, from the one, which is why we say it's all God, right? It's all God. Now, we can do that differently. We can act out of something other than that. We can act out of something other than our own essential nature. We can act out of old beliefs. We can act out of false ideas. We can act out of fear and anger and all kinds of things. But the infinite reality doesn't have any of those human experiences. And so it always only acts out of its own nature, which is for life. Yeah. Oh, man. So the word of God spoken within itself sets the law in motion. The result is creation. The word is the mold. The law produces the form. As there are many words, so there are many forms, each distinct and each an individualized idea of the one. So the idea of, well, if this is all God and it's all one, why do we have all these many things? Well, if it's an infinite reality, it needs an infinite number of many things to express infinity. So we have the multiplicity of the unity. And then all of our brains go on tilt. What? How does that work? That is the paradox that every part of science mind ends itself in a paradox, both and. It's both a unity and a multiplicity. A unity in terms of the aliveness and the intelligence and the law, which is ubiquitous everywhere, and multiplicity, which is all the many forms that are coming and going, because it takes an infinite number of forms to express an infinite nature. Okay, we should probably stop there. Really, the question is, why do we care about this? Why do we start in the science of mind with this heady, cerebral, intellectual conversation about what the heck is going on here? That is the question. What do you think? Why do we start here? So we're going to say good morning to everybody online, in the room. You might need to go get another cup of coffee. And let's see what we think about Why do we start here? Good morning, Ryan. I'm happy to see you. I'm happy to see you, Richard. And let's say hello.
Well, good morning to you too, Dr. Petra, and I am happy to see you as well. And I'm happy to see all the bright, shining faces here in the CSLDallas campus.
I don't know if they're bright and shining.
Yes. Well, I love to see all the souls here in the room today, and all the people who are joining us via Zoom and all across the globe on Facebook Live. We love and appreciate that you're in community with us as well. And as Dr. Petra mentioned, she just dropped a big question on you. I know you're all pontificating it right now, but this is an interactive discussion. So when you're done pontificating, we'd love to hear from you. And we do that in a couple different ways for those folks who are here with us in the room. If you'd like, you can go ahead and raise your hand, and myself or the iconic Richard will hand you off the microphone. And if you do see a friend or a partner here in the room, we encourage you to always pass the mic along. That way you can help in getting it to whomever has another question here in the room. All right. And for the people online via Zoom, there's a couple different ways that you can participate. And I do see we have some hand raised.
Great.
The way that you do that is you hit the raise your hand icon located down below, and we can call you into the room. And or you can always put your questions inside of the chat, and I can bring that in as well. And for all of those folks who are watching us online, and I see a few people on the other side of the big pond that are watching us, so hello and good evening to all of you. You can also engage with us too by putting your questions and comments inside of the chat in Facebook Live, and we'll bring those into the room as well. And I always like to mention that I keep those anonymous, just so then that way we can continue to have a safe container for spiritual growth. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to go anybody here in the room? I'm looking around. They're all pontificate. Oh, we got some
over here. Oh, okay. We got two over here. So we'll go in the room and online and then in the room.
Sounds like a good plan. Right. Let's do that.
This is Jerry, and hello. I want to say, even though this is a 45-minute class, regardless to whether you or Dr. Tracy teaches it, there's way more than I can, appreciate out of it in 1 week. It's just, I even listened to previous ones. It's just a lot of material. So I appreciate how much is in the class. And I have to say, I don't think I'm at the point where I can fully appreciate like the absolute beginning of the universe or mankind. So I just take what I can about the material and teaching. And I can only go back to the absolute beginning. I can only contemplate that so far where I'm like, I reach a stopping point where I can't go any further.
Right.
So that's where I am with it.
Yeah, it's great, Jerry. And it's true, right? Because we are not designed to intellectually understand or contemplate infinity. We can experience in our intuition and in our meditative state, we can experience a knowingness about that, which is why our spiritual practices are so important. And the other side of that coin is, as I said before, the science of mind understands there is no absolute beginning. Because if you have an absolute beginning, the question is, well, what was before that? So, well, who made God? Well, if there's an absolute beginning, right, there's always the question, well, what was before that? So if you recall last week, we talked about the self-existence of the infinite one. So there is no absolute beginning. That I find even harder to wrap my mind around, because our brains are designed, the egoic psychic structure that we have is designed to catalog and separate things, primarily biologically, so that we can separate that which is going to attack us from that which is going to help us. Food that is poisonous and food that is not poisonous. If we can't catalog and separate things, we can't survive physically, right? So our intellectual brains are designed to do that. The good news is we have other ways of knowing. And if we rely only on analysis or intellectually trying to understand it, we will forever come to that place where we cannot wrap our brains around it. And yet we have intuitive ways of knowing that are equally as valuable and as correct or as real ways of knowing, which we experience in our larger, let's say larger meditative states, or the states that allow us to open to this sort of whole knowing, and which actually isn't an understanding. And when we have those experiences, I don't know about you, but I find that I can't describe it, because I'm immediately using words that separate for something that we intuitively experience. So we want to start pushing on the idea within ourselves that there is no absolute beginning, that creation is eternally and infinitely going on. That means infinitely in every time, space, shape, or form that you can try to wrap your mind around, but eternally meaning constantly in the here and now. There's no time when creation isn't happening. And as I said, that's a wrap our brain around that. All right, so we're going to go online and then we'll come back in the room.
Awesome. Looks like I have Donnell. Would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself, Donnell, and join the conversation?
Good morning, Donnell. Is that pronounced correctly?
Yes, you did. You did a great job listening. It typically gets butchered quite a bit, so I appreciate you.
Good.
All right, so hopefully you all can hear me well. Good morning.
We can.
I had a conversation with a friend yesterday. We started a nonprofit about a year ago, and it was an initial comment that I made to a friend saying, hey, I really think we should develop this program that can help people heal, predominantly being men, because there's not too many ideas that's centralized around introspection. They can help men come to a sense of who they are when we discuss self-actuality. And so a friend introduced me to someone else, and we started this project. And yesterday we were talking over a year at how many different partnerships we had developed from this idea. And one of the things we wrote down actually occurred yesterday. And we sat in a moment and thought, bro, did you really think that this would happen? And he said, yeah, because we spoke about it, we thought about it, and why would it not happen? But we came to this reality when I thought about this idea of how much growth that we had experienced over ideas that was brought to mind that we executed on, and the resources, the events and relationships that came upon due to the natural inclination that stirred up our hearts to take action on this idea. And so it made me think about this thing I wrote down. I said, the more you are being the idea, the easier it is to manifest itself. And I thought about how the nature of existence is expansion. And as we started discussing this topic of today, it made me think about the fractal universe.
Yes.
Yeah, how it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going and it keeps going. And all the time, I relate this to the nature in our relationship with Source, and how Source has this passion to experience consciousness within itself, and it does it through us. And we continuously expand and we continuously grow, not just on a material level, but of course, energetically, and all dimensions of what consciousness looks like. So this is really beautiful as I think about how are we limiting the idea of what Source desires to live through us? Because I feel like that does manifest a lot of disease, and it prevents truly experiencing the nature of who we are within who Source is as well.
That is beautiful. What she said, fabulous, right? Absolutely. So I want to go back to the quote that you said that you wrote down. Can you say again what the piece that you wrote down?
Yes. The more you are being the idea, the easier it manifests itself.
Yes.
And how I communicate is the person needs to show up. The person that you need to show up already has to have a presence to create space. So that means in order, you have to be the seed. You have to create space.
That's right.
So, yeah,
that's right. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Donnell. Right. We could go home now. She's yeah, right. That was brilliant. That was a brilliant statement, right? Of why this answers the question why we start here, because we can't really understand the recognition that when we are that which we choose to express, it's by being it that we set the manifestation process into being. But we're not asserting that. Well, I'm saying that because I'm Petra Weldis, or I'm saying that because I'm part of Science Mind, or I'm saying that because somehow I've, become enlightened. No, we can say it because we understand this is the nature of reality. And we recognize that if this is the nature of reality, this is true for every single being, every single person, no one left out. No one is not doing this. And so by recognizing that this is the nature of reality, what we're talking about, how creation happens, that there is a desire for expression, and Donnell, you said that as well, right? Source is forever desiring to express. God is forever wanting to be put in form, is how Ernest Holmes says it, right? Archaic language, but the same concept. And how does it do it? Out of itself, by being inside what we want to experience. That's the manifestation process. Well, that's exactly what the infinite is doing. And we do it not because we say we do it because that's how the infinite does it. And because we are the infinite becoming conscious of itself, that means we do it too. Do you see? Rather than anthropomorphizing the infinite, which is what we do when we think about a god or a deity that behaves like a superhuman or behaves like a poorly, a dysfunctional human, right? What we're doing is impressing our ideas of us onto that. But what we're wanting to do is to impress upon ourselves an understanding of the nature of reality. Do you see? This is why we start with the nature of reality, so that we can say, well, it's true everywhere else, therefore it must be true about me too. That creates for me, what I feel and experience is it creates a ground upon which I can stand, so that when I want to then set that creative process in motion, I have a ground to stand on. I'm not just asserting it out of the blue. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Donnell. We're going to come up here to Willie.
Well, you and Donnell have answered everything I was thinking about. That was amazing. That's hard to follow. But interesting to me. I've been coming here for so long, and today is the first time I heard you say, there is no beginning. It's always beginning. And that just clarified so much.
Yeah.
Just all of a sudden.
I love that.
Yeah, just out of the blue. And I thought, why haven't I ever thought of that? Why haven't I ever realized that before? And I think we do this because we need to understand.
Yeah.
Things need to make sense.
Yes. 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 Beautiful.
Because I lived half my life trying to fit into a box that I didn't fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And because nothing made sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thanks, Willie. And I love what you said. You've been coming in for a very long time. And today you heard that. Yeah. Right. And so, Jerry, coming back to your comment, right? This is what happens. This is why we're in spiritual community. We're in spiritual community for a long time. We keep coming back. We take a class. We come to the Sunday class. Sometimes we go just to the celebration. Sometimes we just are in our Sangha, whatever it is. But over time, the things that we need in the moment, we embody. And then the next thing we embody. And then some of these things that either have not been meaningful to us, or it's kind of gone in one ear and out the other, like whatever, I'm busy being interested in this, right? All of a sudden we hear something and it kind of brings things together. And it's also the reason why we're on our 6th time through the book over the last 20 years, because each time we all go a little deeper, we learn a little more, we pick up new people who are just doing, starting their first pass, and we hear things new, right? We hear things we haven't heard before, and it begins to clarify. So lovely. Thank you so much. All right, Ryan, I'm going to check in with you if there is another comment out there or something in the chat to share.
Yes, I have our favorite friend on Wednesday, Ms. Bobby.
Yeah.
I see her hands up, so I'm going to call her into the room. Bobby, are you there? Would you like to
morning,
unmute
Bobby.
yourself and say hello?
Good morning. I didn't have my hand up, Ryan. I don't know why that's there.
Oh,
Well,
well,
we'll just
maybe
say
we
good
were
morning
giving
to you.
each other a virtual high five. That's what we were doing, Bobby.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
High five.
Yeah,
Thank you for watching.
I will say there is no beginning because it's always present tense. We're always in the now. So there is no
There is-
beginning and there is no end. There's only now.
Yes, and from the infinite absolute sense, that would be true. We, of course, experience in our human experience duration, but that is only part of our human experience, right? It is the eternality of the nowness, which is that infinite reality. It's exactly right. Thank you, Bobby. All right,
Yeah, I see a question. I'm going to
Okay.
read this one. And it follows in a lot of the same line of what we're talking about here. But as Ernest Holmes is being spoken by spirit, and spirit is also continuing to evolve through co-creation through us. The question is, do you know, I'm kind of looking at this. Do you know what it's out of and why we are here? So what would be the point of this all? What is the point of all this co-creation that we're going through?
Oh, good. It's good. I will have to read the few paragraphs here to see how this is talked about. We might not, let's see. It's in here, but I won't, you have to just read these paragraphs. So the short answer to the purpose of life, first of all life and our life, the short answer is so that the infinite can experience itself through all of the expression of creation. So this is one of the places where I disagree with Ernest Holmes. I get to do that. So do you. I disagree with Ernest Holmes. He says not only is God self-existent, but is also self-knowing. Well, we will not get overly technical here, but if the one does not have expression in the absolute, it can't be self-knowing because there's nothing outside of itself, and therefore there's no way for it to experience a self, which is not something else, right? That's how a self is created, is because it's separate from everything else. I recognize this self. And if the one is unexpressed and is in its absolute potential, there is no self-knowing. There's only knowing. There's only consciousness. There's only intelligence. So along with the Hindus, the purpose of life is and the purpose of evolution is the creation of organs, which for us is the human being. There are probably many other organs all over the universe and galaxies that can feel and sense and experience the nature of reality, and therefore consciously create. And then self-knowingness comes into being. And this is how this is why we say we understand ourselves to be individualized expressions of the one, not separate, but individuated. It is in the sense of separation that self arises. And this is the way the universe knows what it's doing and gets to experience it. The sunset does not experience itself as beautiful. The hummingbird does not experience itself as precious. It takes something to see it, appreciate it, experience it, something to express and know that is expressing. And that is the whole point of creation. Otherwise, you simply have potential. You simply have possibility and no way of experiencing it. So you and I are doing that. So our purpose isn't to become an accountant or a teacher. Our purpose isn't to love our children, or our purpose isn't necessarily to do anything in particular. Our purpose is to be all that we can be, however we just choose that to be, because nobody else is choosing it the way that you choose it. So you are one infiniteness of the infinite. And without you, the infinite is -1. Do you see? That's how important you are. That's how important your life is. And the more that we awaken to that, the more we consciously experience it, rather than simply running on autopilot or asleep. This is another reason why we start with the nature of reality. Otherwise, our question, why are we here and what is the point, is really hard to answer. And we think the point is something that we're going to do. The doingness is the way in which we express, and the way in which the infinite is expressing as us. But the doingness in and of itself isn't the purpose. It's the expression and the experience of it that's the purpose. And we're fulfilling Source's desire to be expressed in all of its myriad of ways. We're fulfilling that by showing up and becoming as conscious as we possibly can be, and becoming as aligned as we possibly can be. And so this is another reason why we spend time trying to understand the nature of reality, so that we discover the meaning and purpose of our own lives. It's a great question. And it's so powerful when we realize who we really are and what we're really doing here. All right. Anything else out there, Ryan? Otherwise, I shall carry on.
Yes, I do have Brenda here.
Okay.
Brenda, would you like to go ahead and unmute yourself and join us?
Hi, Brenda.
Good morning, Dr. Peter and community. What a great conversation in your question, why do we start here? And so I was taking a CSL class from a brilliant scholar, looking at the ancient scriptures as metaphors for our consciousness. And this scholar encouraged each of our students in the class to have a different version of the scriptures. And we went back, my study partner blew my mind with this revelation. King James says, when we, the expression of the divine, were removed from the oneness, i.e. kicked out of the garden, we were clothed in animal skins. Well, I come from a Hebraic tradition, so I went back to the Hebrew, where every letter and dot has a meaning. And it said, we are clothed in skins, not animal skins. So my study partner went back to the Lammas tradition in the Aramaic, where it says we are clothed in skin. What are we without our skin? We are light. We are beings of light. We are the divine with all its capacities and all of its potentials and all of its abilities to manifest. And why are we here? To have the experience of ourselves in this skin while remembering we are but a skinned piece of the one.
Beautiful. You should all be teaching this class. I love that. It's fabulous. I love it. I love it. It's another beautiful way of describing exactly what we're trying to get at here, right? And we can't really even intuitively sense the truth that we are light clothed in skin if we do not try in some sense to hold an idea about what that light is and why the light wants to be clothed in skin and what it's doing, right? Again, answering the question, why do we start here? And I'll tell you, it is worth spending time on. It's worth hurting your brain over. Truly, I kid you not, I spent a year contemplating infinity because I could not bend my mind around it. Jerry, just like you said, like, what? I could not bend my mind around it. I literally spent a year, and that was my primary contemplation, infinity, starting out with the infinite number lines, right? Do you remember learning about infinite number lines? That blew my mind. I think I was in geometry, like, what? And then not only do you have an infinite positive number line, you have an infinite negative number line. What does that mean? Oh my God, I couldn't even bend my mind around an infinite negative number line, like a black hole. Like, what is that? Like, what? And I mean, and that's where I started with my contemplation of the infinite and this idea that there's no beginning, and this idea that it's everywhere present, and this idea that it's eternally here and now. I spent a whole year, it was like contemplating a koan, right? And each time getting popped into a little deeper awareness, a little greater expanded, like, I don't think I could explain it, but I saw something. And then you kind of look at it out of the corner of your eye. Don't look at it really hard. Don't try to analyze it. You can't like analyze it and try to figure it out. No, you got to look at it out of the corner of your eye and get some, and then feel into it, right? And these are, it will shift. What we're shifting is where we're standing. We're shifting where we're standing and what we believe to be true about or understand to be true about ourselves and the way the universe works. And when we cement that in, everything changes. Now, all of our manifestation is coming from the inside out, as opposed to trying to make it happen. I'm going to manifest this thing. Well, we can do that. Absolutely. And it's exhausting. And so that's why we start here. And too many people gloss over this. I think they just want to know how to do it. Just tell me how to do it. Because it's hard work. And yet the other reason that we start here and we do the hard work is because it's easy to be positive when everything is going well. And it's easy to manifest when you already believe that something is true, right? What we need is a spiritual ground to stand on when all we have is our conviction about how it works, despite the fact that we don't believe it, whatever the outcome is we're hoping for. Do you see? We need the conviction when we're in crisis, when we're overwhelmed by fear or uncertainty, when things are happening that feel out of our control. We need that ground to stand on so that we can walk through it and participate in the manifestation that we ourselves do not yet fully believe is possible. But we stand on the conviction of how we know the universe operates. Do you see? That becomes our anchor. And we need that. Otherwise, we're just said, well, do it because I told you to do it, or do it because somebody wrote it in a book. And then when crisis hits, it's more challenging to simply assert those truths. Did you want to share something? Okay, one last comment and then we're going to close. So if you can just bring that over. I saw a hand back here, and so please.
Hi, good morning. I'm Dr. Jane. I was just thinking that every time I come here, Petra, and every time I listen to you, I am unconsciously looking for an answer to a conflict or a problem or something I'm facing. And today, the spiritual ground I'm standing on is that no matter what I'm facing, there is an infinite number of possibilities for solution.
Yes. Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And it is that gives us our oomph when we're facing things. So I'm so glad you're here today, Dr. Jane. Yay. All right. So we're going to carry on with our reading. We are starting our Journey to Awakening, our 6-week program. Journey to Awakening, the Soul is Calling. We're starting that today. So I hope that you're in a home study group. We have fabulous material for you to explore in your home study groups. If you are not yet in a home study group, I'm guessing Ryan's frantically putting it in the chat because I'm talking about it. Otherwise, you can reach out to Rev Patty with an I, Rev Patty at CSLDallas.org, and she will make sure that you're in a home study group. It's a fabulous 6-week program that we're starting this Sunday. So we'll see you in the celebration. We'll see you next week. We'll see you on Wednesday nights, online or in person. We're so grateful to be in community together. Bye for now.